Welcome to another episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Allen, and with me today is Hauke. Hauke has been building his brand Nevermore Visuals, and what he does is he helps musicians through creating enticing visuals, with strategy behind them. He's been focusing on touring the world, and he's about to be leaving to work with All That Remains and Miss I May for the next 3 months out on tour. He's also a part of something called the Sauce Market, which is a creative collective that hosts photo meetups, live streams, soon-to-be clinics, and more. Hawk, how you doing?
Doing good, my man.
Right on.
Gearing up. I got, I think, what's today, the 4th? Yeah, I got 4 days, and then I leave to embark on this 3-month journey.
Right on, bro. Let's dive into that a little bit more. Let's dive into more about like that tour, kind of what you're going to be doing. What's your role in that?
Yeah, so it is a very busy tour for me. So it's 3 months long. So the main band is All That Remains. They're the first one that brought me on. It is the 15-year anniversary of their album, The Fall of Ideals, which, like, for people in metalcore metal, that's like a super influential album. It's almost like trying to find another album to compare it to, but like it's their version of like the Metallica Black album, so to speak. And for like that genre of music, that's sort of like where it lays. So yeah, mostly working with them. And then Miss May I approached me to, oh my God, my camera's blurry. Hi. Oh my God, classic. But don't worry, we got these things on deck. Look at that. And yeah. Anyways, Miss May I approached me as well to do some content. But yeah, my main duties on the tour are for All That Remains. I'm going to be documenting just about everything on video, doing a little bit of photo as well. So that's capturing the actual shows, and then behind the scenes stuff on the bus, so on and so forth. And then also, while I'm doing that, I'm going to be running their Twitch channel. So just kind of doing like video engineering for that end of things. We've got a whole setup to capture live sound and do all the fun stuff for the people that can't attend for whatever reason that may be. Then for Miss May I, it's just mostly a photo gig, and then just like weekly recap videos and fun stuff here and there. So I got my work cut out for me for sure. It's a lot to handle on a single tour.
This isn't your first one though, right? You've done tours
No.
before?
Yeah, I've done. The most recent one I did was with Nita Strauss. That was probably like 2 months ago. She's the first woman in 26 years to crack the Billboard Top 10. And then right after the tour, she got to #1, making her the first woman in history to ever do that as a solo artist, that is. So it's been fun working with everyone.
Yeah, right on. How'd you get into that? Like, how'd you get into the whole like tour, and I guess just like in music world in general, through what you do?
There's a lot that goes into it, but I can kind of trace it to a few different points. I'd say like at its earliest, I was always in the music scene and just kind of doing things on my own accord. And that led me to certain connections like within the music world for my own music. But then was doing hair for about 7 years before I did the video thing. And probably about in my 3rd or 4th year of that, I was friends with somebody in a band called Attila, and they were playing the festival Warped Tour. It was the last Warped Tour of 2018. And basically their singer, Chris, otherwise known as Franz, hit me up and was like, yo, I will give you backstage passes if you come and fade me up and just like help the band out. And I was like, for sure. And then that kind of just like, a bunch of people saw me cutting his hair and they were like, oh, you've got a whole kit. Like, we're all rough and raggy. Like, can you do that for us too? So I did that. And then different bands would bring me out for like 1 or 2 more dates of that one. And then, sorry, that was actually 2016. I got my timeline messed up. But I actually did the Warped Tour as a hairstylist in 2018 using the connections that I had from that, and then met pretty much everybody on that tour. And then from there, it's just a matter of like keeping the phone numbers and just keeping up with the people that you met and formed relationships with. So anytime a band would come into town, whether it was like Mayday Parade or Wage War or like some of these other bands, I would just shoot somebody a text and be like, hey, saw that you're coming to my city and like, a few days. I don't know how you guys are feeling, but like if you want haircuts, like I'm down to come out and do that. Um, After a period of time, I started to switch into the video world. I was still doing hair at that time, but I basically still used that hair connection of like, hey, I'll come cut your hair. And then I'd be like, well, I actually also have a camera with me. Is it like cool if I like try to get some shots? Like no promises or anything like that. Like I don't know that I'm any good because at that point I didn't. Um, and so these bands would just like give me a chance doing it. And then from there, I still had all the contacts when I switched over to video fully. And then so I would just keep doing what I was doing. But then I was just like, hey, I actually do video now. Like if you're down, like just give me a photo pass and I'll just, you can use whatever I got, whether it's video, photo, whatever. And so I just kind of built up my chops in that way. And eventually people just kind of are like, oh, you actually do good stuff. And then they ask you about touring and whatnot. And yeah, so you just meet the musicians and then it kind of goes from there once you have that relationship. And then just people ask around, oh, how's this dude? Is he cool? Is he cool to tour with? Is he cool to just hang out with? Blah blah blah. And enough people say your name enough times and then you get the gig pretty much.
Right. Dude, that's crazy. I had no idea you actually ever did hair.
Oh yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
was the
How did you get into that originally?
oh man, that's this other own story. When I was when I was in high school, I wanted to be a musician full time. That was like my goal. I didn't want to go to college, didn't want to do that. I knew that from a super early age, even though I always did well in school. Um, and around like junior year, my parents are like, all right, well, you got to start applying for colleges and like think about this stuff and all that. And I was like, no, I don't. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm going to make music and I'm going to do this. I'd rather be homeless than blah, 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 blah. And they were like, well, that's cool. Cause like, I hope you're cool with actually being homeless because you will be, because we will kick you out if you don't go to college. And I was like, fuck. So I had to figure out something else to do. That I didn't mind, that was like acceptable to them, but also in the vein of like being a creative person. And so I kind of whittled it down to a few things. Like I was like, oh, I could be a tattoo artist. Like maybe I could do some sort of like blue collar trade, like electrical. I wasn't so fond of that idea. And then I got the idea. I was like, oh, well, like maybe I could do hair, like because I knew a few hairstylists that were also musicians at the time, and I was like, all right, like I'll jump into that and like see how it goes because they let you look how you want to look. It's a future proof job. Um, it's something you can kind of just always fall back on, because no matter how the economy goes or how technology goes, like there's always going to be people that need haircuts and there's always going to be people that will pay for that. So
Right.
I was like, seems stable. That's what I'll do. I did it. I got good at it. I enjoyed it, but I also made sure to like push it into my broader goal and use it as a sort of networking opportunity. And then yeah, I would make content for myself, like taking photos of my clients, making haircutting videos, and they started doing really well. Tattooers started hitting me up because that was like a community I was super involved with, still am. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how hair transitioned into doing other things. It was just like, oh, I got tattooers and musicians, and then I can use them as clients, and that's how it went.
Dude, that's awesome. What were like some of your biggest resources as you started to transition into more of the media side of things? What were some of like your biggest either influences, resources? What helped you the most, like kind of along your journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. I'd say the biggest thing was like I always say like I went to YouTube University, which is I just
Feel that.
like went to the internet and was just like I know that if I spend enough time looking at the right people, I can apply these skills and learn them. So like that was one. There was the practical side of the job, which was like trying things out while I had the safety net of my decently well-paying job of being like, all right, cool. Like let's try these techniques and these things that I'm learning on YouTube and apply them to what I'm doing now. And then it was like, okay, I can make good high performing content for myself. So then it just kind of gained the trust of other people. Um, I've read books on business as well. It was something that you also kind of just know as a hairstylist, especially in the position I was in. I was a very like go-getter kind of person.
Right.
So um I was never somebody that wasn't booked. And that's not something that just comes out of nowhere. That comes from you approaching strangers and like forming connections with people. And I guess to sort of tie it into your podcast name, like making yourself uncomfortable and being
Mm.
willing to be uncomfortable in all those areas. And then just a matter of like, what do people want? What are the hiccups that I'm finding? Um, how can I learn how to solve those things? And then, yeah, I would say YouTube was probably my biggest resource. And the next was just like looking at like movies, TV shows, and all that while I worked. I've always had a pretty critical eye and I've always reversed engineered things. So I take a lot of influence from movies and TV shows. And once you kind of like use the like YouTube university, so to speak, to like
Right.
grasp technical aspects, you can just kind of reverse engineer things. Well, you might see a shot that you really like, you take a screen grab of it and you're like, all right, cool. Well, it looks like they've got a, 300D diffuse light coming from this, and then they got a backlight and that's colored red. And like, this conveys XY motion and that's what makes the shot beautiful. So like now that I've mapped out how to do that, I can recreate that pretty easily on my own.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely a student of YouTube University myself. I can't tell you
Hell
many
yeah.
times or how many hours I guess that I've just spent, watching YouTube videos, and I've learned more there than any classroom. But
For sure.
that's a whole other topic. um,
Mhm.
for anyone that's trying to, I guess, like how you're talking about connecting with people and just reaching out to people and how it's a really uncomfortable thing for
Mhm.
many people, like what are some sort of, I guess, practical tips or steps that you would like recommend people take to do that?
Sure. There's a lot that I could probably say, especially because it was sort of artificially learned for me. Like I'm naturally I've become an ambivert um, over this time, which is somebody that is both introverted and extroverted. Like I can draw energy from both. But early on, I was very introverted. That was another reason why I got into hair, was to sort of break that out of me. I learned conversationally, it almost really doesn't matter what you say, uh, as long as you're just like kind of keeping a light heart and just kind of approaching things, in a fun way. That can kind of get you through the small talk stages of things, which is important. Like some people say, I hate small talk and this and that. And it's like, well, a little bit of playful banter just kind of like breaks the ice a little bit, and then
Mhm.
you can get into your business side of things. But once you do that, there's sort of like a little territory that you kind of have to exist in, right? Because if you're too serious and too pushy with somebody and they don't know you that well, like might not go over the way that you hope that it would. Um, so I do it by asking questions and just being a genuinely curious person and not just assuming that I'm the right person. So like anytime I have a business conversation with somebody, I'm like, okay, like, well, let's actually dig into what it is that you're trying to solve and like why you think media is the solution for that thing. Like, I think it's a great tool, it's a great resource to have, but like maybe it's not actually right. Maybe you just have FOMO. Maybe you saw that,
Mhm.
whatever band, like, I don't know, Bad Omens put out a sick music video and like you're an up and coming band and you want one too, but like you only have $1,000 and you're referencing a $5,000 video. Like,
Right.
maybe your effort to get new fans is better spent on spending maybe that $1,000 on a visualizer instead, and
Mhm.
then pumping another $1,000 into marketing. Like maybe that's your actual solution, and so rather than kind of bludgeoning them and being like, oh well, my price is X, like, and if you can't afford me, you can't afford me, fuck you, bye. It's more like you dig into the problem that they have, and then you say like, all right, cool, well, we can still do this. If you're dead set on a music video, we do have to increase our budget by whatever that difference is. um but this is this is what I think would work for you as well, and it's something you might want to consider. And so you're not necessarily like diluting the offer, but you're positioning yourself as an expert, as somebody that knows how to fix their problems. And so whether you get the sale that day or not, what you've done is you've built trust with that person, so that the next time that
Mhm.
they hit you up, or you hit them up, hey, what are you thinking about a music video or a documentary or some shit like that. They're like, oh yeah, I remember, like you must be keeping an eye on me. That's another thing with like
Right.
business relationships as well. I always, if I have a meeting with somebody, first of all, I schedule it. But secondly, like I actually look into that person and that business or band and actually like look at concrete things. Like I just have a system of, you know, different factors that I look at for them. And I say, all right, cool. Well, your streaming numbers are X and this and that. And just by doing that, like 10 minutes of time to look at them specifically, it makes a big difference in how your conversation is going to go. Because again, you're positioning yourself as an expert and someone that cares. So again, you're like bringing your trust from absolutely nothing sometimes to like an immense amount of trust where they're willing to spend a lot of money with you, or trust you with your services even if it's not a lot of money, because you've shown that you're investing into them and you are therefore deserving of their investment into you.
Dude, yeah. Another thing too, like to add on to that, is I feel like when you build that like rapport and you build that relationship with those clients, they're that much more likely to like refer you to other people, and you're much more likely to get that referral and to expand that network as well. But also you mentioned FOMO, and I feel like that's something that's social media has, exponentially made such a bigger thing. And you've got all these people out there looking for, they see all these flashy videos, they see all this content that looks incredible, and they want that right out the gate. How do you, let's see, how do I word this? Like, how would you, for someone that's looking for media, how would you touched on this a little bit, but how would you suggest like that they go about knowing, like, how do they know what they need? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what I would say is, again, like it comes back to asking questions, diagnosing, and being a really good listener.
Yeah.
So you first have to listen to them, and hear what they're saying. But like I am an active note taker when I'm
Mhm.
having meetings with somebody. So anytime they say something that I'm like, like that's something of interest, or like that might have a deeper meaning into it. I'm writing those things down as they're speaking, and as I'm having this meeting with them, and then it's like, they're like, yeah, our fan engagement like has been really low for the past few releases. And then you're like, okay, well, cool. Well, not cool that you have low fan engagement, but like, your fan engagement isn't good. Like that sounds like a problem to me. Like, what are what are you hoping to get, right? And then they're like, well, I'd really like to have like 2,000 comments on my video. Well, okay, that's a metric that I can use,
Yeah.
right? Well, at that point, then you have something where you can be like, all right, well, I have to make a piece of content that um, has a call to action to get people to comment on it. Okay, well, like, what does that kind of content look like? So, like, you just get a bunch of those sort of problems and goals of theirs, and then at that point, you have a list, and then it's the part where now that you've listened, you become a doctor and now you're diagnosing. So you're saying, okay, cool, you need X amount of comments. So we're going to do something that maybe is mysterious, or, so on and so forth, has a complex storyline that might get people engaged. All right, and your other goal is you want to convert people from YouTube to Spotify because your Spotify numbers are bad, but your YouTube numbers are good. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. Like maybe we can add a little call to action at the end. Maybe it's a short little clip. Hey, thanks for watching the video. We really appreciate it. If you like this music video, our track is now available on Spotify, blah, 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 blah. You know, little things that you can do. And at that point, again, you more than likely are doing more than most of the other creators out there when you're doing this. But at that point, even if you don't necessarily get the exact results you're looking for, you've now again created a thing where you're like, all right, well, it didn't work exactly how we wanted, but getting 2,000 comments is a lot of comments to get if you're previously getting like 200, right? we
Right.
want to we want to
Right.
10x those. So you know let's take a look at what worked and what didn't work. And it's like, then you keep the client because now you're a part of their business. You're almost like an advisor to them. So yeah, like I guess to come back to your question, like I combat FOMO by just kind of like wiping it out of the client's mind a little bit,
Hmm.
just Jedi mind tricking it, really. It's
Right.
like they see the shiny thing and then they just think that this thing that they saw is the solution. But what your job is to, again, diagnose it and be like, all right, I know you have FOMO, like I know you want this thing, but like let's actually tailor this to you and make it something that you can actually see a return on.
Right. I think another problem a lot of people have, both clients and creators, and I mean, just anyone out there that's putting content out there, that's putting anything out there into the world, it's so easy for us to focus on like the clients we don't have, or
Mhm.
the engagement we don't have, or like you said, like focusing on like, oh, it's only 2,000 follower or comments or whatever, instead of focusing on like, you're talking to 2,000 people. Like, that's a big deal. You put 2,000 people in a room, that's a lot of people.
Mhm.
So I think it's so easy to just like get lost in those metrics and lost in those numbers instead of focusing on who you do have. It's like there's so much focus on who you don't have. And when you focus on who you do have and you really tailor to the audience and you really cater to them and focus on them and care for them and like nurture that engagement and that audience that you do have, it's just that much more likely to grow than if you're sitting here like stressed out about all the people you don't have and the engagement you don't have. But another problem I know a lot of creators have, this is a problem I've faced a lot myself, is pricing and knowing how to value yourself and your work. It's often really hard to kind of like, there's not a whole lot to base it on, so to speak. And so, what is your what's been your experience with this? And then what are like suggestions or tips that you have for creatives who are maybe struggling with like knowing their worth and pricing?
For sure. Yeah, that, like in this industry, it's like a big. No matter what you say, there's always other people on the other side of the aisle that are like, no, fuck that.
Right.
And I've been on both sides of it. So I'd say for pricing things, like it doesn't have to be quite as esoteric as people think. So usually when I take a project, one, I just have like a minimum level of like I'm not going to do anything less than this. Anything less than this is not worth me waking up
Mhm.
and getting out of bed and doing it. For me personally, like when it comes to music videos, stuff like that, I just don't touch anything less than 3,500, and that's because it's not profitable.
Yeah.
And then, well, how do you determine that? Well, I'm not a one man band when it comes to my shoots because I don't think that that's the best way to do things. I just don't think that that's my best work. All my best work is when I hire a crew. Well, at that point, then I'm no longer just a freelancer. I'm a production company. So what does it cost to hire these people? Um, those metrics are pretty easy to find on on the internet. But let's say, for example, like a director or a DP, like director or cinematographer, both are about 800 a day for like a 10-hour day. Whether that's you doing the job or not, that's what you're going to say. Okay, this is one day shoot, 800 for a director, 800 for a cinematographer. Okay, we're going to need a gaffer. That's usually in like the 650 for a 10-hour day range. Okay, cool. We got one of those. Maybe you need a sound engineer. That's about the same as a gaffer, so another 650. At that point, you're whatever, like 3,100 or something like that. Well, how much does it cost for the gear if someone were to rent it? Again, you can just cross-reference that with a precision camera or Adorama or wherever, rent borrowlenses.com. Okay, so my camera package is worth roughly like a 400 day rental. Okay, so 400 there. How much is the lighting package? That's about $300 for rentals. And then how much is the sound gear? Those sound guys usually come with them. So now you have your day rates for people, and then you have your gear cost, which whether you've bought it or rented it doesn't really matter because you have to make that money back. Otherwise, you're just losing it. So you're technically renting your gear every time that you use it. Um, so you have that list. Well, now there's the other thing of like project management or like producing. If you don't charge for that, you are basically just creating a freelance job for yourself. And then, in my opinion, you're not getting paid, right? Because you could have just paid somebody else $800 to do it and they would have made $800, but you would have made zero. So you have to assume yourself as somebody else, basically. So then you add a project management fee. You don't necessarily like state that in the official invoice to a client, these next two things. So project management, that's something that you got to add on because it does take time reaching out to the client, having the meetings with the client, dealing with any sort of things that come up. I like to hire people for this role as well. And then the last thing is tack on 20% on top of that to create profit because that's the money that you're going to make. Because if you have an LLC, like you're not a business unless you are taking profit from it, which by definition is money that it doesn't cost to make the service. And the percentage of that is usually 20%. That's pretty fair. So like formula wise, that's how I'd price things. Now obviously different skill levels determine different, day rates and stuff like that. So that's a part of it. And then the last thing that you can consider, which is sort of like the X variable, is me personally, I don't value my time and I don't value my gear, which means like I'm not selling you my time, I'm not selling you my gear, I'm selling you like the acquisition of a goal, right? So what's that goal worth to you, right? Because if I don't know, Kendrick Lamar hits me up, that's a lot different than if a local rapper hits me up, right? Because first of all, he's going to have different expectations, but more than anything, he has more to gain from what I'm going to give him.
Right.
So a local rapper might not make his, whatever 3,500, 4,000 bucks back, but um, Kendrick Lamar, if his video is seen by, you know, whatever his usual numbers are, like 15 million, 20 million, 50 million kind of things, like he's going to make that in the streaming revenue. This is going to also engage with like the ads that we do. His ads might end up selling products and, increases overall brand. So it's a lot easier to charge somebody like that 30, 50, 40, $100,000 because the value of what you're bringing them is increased by their value also. So that's sort of like the X factor is like, well, what value am I bringing you? Because it wouldn't make sense if you charge them the same amount, even if it costs only $4,500 or something like that to make. Like if you were to invest into stock, let's say, or into anything else in this world, if you were to spend $4,500 and then make $450,000 back, that's absurd. Like that makes no sense. It makes a lot more sense to, you know, sell somebody that's looking to make 450,000, sell them something that's $100,000 because, you're forexing, which is still amazing. Like nobody's going to complain about an extra $300,000 they gained, but it's like the value of the two are pretty congruent with each other. So that's probably how or not even probably, that is how I go about pricing my value and valuing myself is very along the lines of valuing others and then just kind of having an internal sense of, how much I'm worth compared to other people around me.
Right. So much value in that. So much to unpack there. But dude, I love that concept. I've actually never heard it put that way or thought of it that way, I guess. But yeah, I think that's just something so many creatives struggle with. It's something I've struggled with myself. Because it comes down to, I feel like, just like knowing your worth and like your abilities, both in like how good you are and how maybe not good you are. You can't get too in over your head, but I feel like more often than not, us as creatives, like we tend to get insecure about our work and we feel like we're not good enough. And we're like, well, but I can't charge that. Like no one's going to pay me for that. But then there's also the flip side of that of like, I guess, desperation, needing money and being like, well, if I charge this, what if I don't get any gigs? Like no one's going to pay for that. But that's just holding ourselves back. And that's keeping us from, what could be. And then it's putting ourselves in a box and it's defining the bar, like it's setting the bar for ourselves. And like, we can't go above that.
Yeah. There's two things that happens with like low pricing.
Yeah.
Like one, you may get more clients, but what's going to happen is one, they're going to refer to you to other low value clients, which is going to tie you up at that price range even more, which sucks. And then two, actually we're going to do three things. Two, you're not making money, you're losing money on that gig, because again, if you were to pay somebody else to do it, how much would you have to pay them? Third, and most importantly, is oh man, brain fart. Hold on, we're gonna take a sip of Bang and hope that it revives us. Where was I? Can you refresh me a little bit?
You're going through, we were talking about what happens with low pricing. You were mentioning three things that
Oh, right. The last thing. Thank you. Now, all it took was
the
you
bang.
saying it.
It's the bang.
Think of it like selling prints. You could price your prints at 25 bucks, right? And that's super cheap, super affordable, you'd say. But to make 2,500 bucks, you have to sell 100 of them.
Right.
Okay, well, what if you just set your prints to be 250 bucks, which again is still not a bunch, but then you only have to sell 10. So then like the value of that thing goes up. That's something that happens in art a lot, is you price something high, it just makes it seem more valuable to other people, and you have to sell less of them to make it work. So you could bog yourself down with 4 $350 music videos a month, or you could just focus all of your effort onto landing one $3,500 music video client every month, and then they're going to refer you more people, and eventually you're going to have 4, 5, 6, however many you can handle, and then you can raise your prices no problem because your client base is already there. So you just have to think about that. It's like it becomes easier because you sell something high value, people see it as high value, and then it's just a matter of getting somebody. And I promise you, there is always somebody out there that will purchase something.
Right. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I would actually add a fourth thing onto that. What happens with the low pricing is it just kills your self-esteem. And I feel like that's one of the quickest like paths to burnout with like just as a creative. I mean, regardless of what you do in the creative world. And I mean, I guess that can really apply to anything, whether you're selling a product or a service or whatever it may be. If you're not knowing your worth and you're not pricing yourself according to your real worth, not the insecure worth that you might perceive in yourself, when you're, like I said, I mean, you're boxing yourself in, you're holding yourself back. And through doing that, that's going to diminish your self-worth, which is just going to lead to you growing resentment against this craft or whatever it is you're doing. And it's going to lead to burnout. And then eventually you're just going to give up. And so, yeah. I mean, I think it's uncomfortable to, know your worth and to really put that pricing out there. But I actually worked with a coach a little bit. It's probably a little over a year ago now. But I was talking with her a lot about pricing, this kind of conversation. And one of the things that she said was like, she was like, what feels good? Like, say a number that feels good and like add a little bit onto it.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's move on. I actually want to know a little bit about, where does the name Nevermore come from?
Yeah, I'm a big like English and poetry writing fan. So unsurprisingly, I love Edgar Allan Poe. I have an Edgar Allan Poe tattoo, the portrait of him, and where it kind of like came in was when I had just started launching it as a business and as something that I was going to pursue. I had written a song. I don't remember the original title of it, but I wrote this song and I reached out to somebody named David Escamilla. He was at the time a vocalist for a band called Crown the Empire. And at that time also, I don't believe he had ever done any features for anybody. He had just quit the band. And so I reached out to him and I was like, hey, would you be down to feature on this track? He did it. And one of the lines that he had in it, he just like super powerfully screamed Nevermore, and like it just sounded cool. So then like that became the song title, and then the project that I was working on, we just didn't end up doing anything, and I moved on to something else. And I was like, that's a cool name, and so I just did that, paired it with visuals, and kind of called it a day.
Right on.
Yeah, plus I feel like it gives like a dark imagery sort of aspect to it, and I don't mind niching down and separating all the other stuff that I'm less interested in.
I like it. It keeps it keeps it kind of mysterious, but that's a cool story, dude. What So someone else that's like looking out there to maybe start a media business or to get into media, and I know we talked about this a little bit, but as far as the business side of things go, how has that looked for you?
How has it looked in what sense?
As far as like, how do you manage, like, how do you manage the business and the creativity? Like, how do those like balance out for you?
Sure. So one thing I learned about myself is if I don't create sort of like an alarm system for all the
Mhm.
things that I have to do in a day, I'm not going to do them. So I just have a Google Calendar that I perpetually update with the things that I have to do, both personal and business related. And I make sure I just follow those steps. As for like balancing creativity and business, I try to break my days into halves. So one part of the day is going to be spent doing the work, editing or going to the photo shoot or whatever it is, and another half of the day, or roughly half of it, is spent either in meetings or just general client acquisition, reaching out, having those conversations, and making sure that I'm doing that on a somewhat regular basis. Um, so yeah, just like that's kind of what I do to balance the two, is just setting times for business, setting times for creativity, and then also making sure that I put some free time in there and I do my best not to violate those times as well, because I'm somebody that's very, very prone to burnout, and when I get burned out,
Mhm.
nothing gets done for a very long period of time.
Right. What are ways like outside of just, I mean, what you just mentioned, what are like other ways, I guess maybe more like even in your personal life, that you do to avoid that burnout? Or when you feel those feelings of burnout coming on, like what do you do to sort of switch that and I guess reverse it?
That's a good question. I kind of have to think about that one. Um, I'd say there's almost like the two kinds of burnout. One is the burnout that you're aware is coming. You're like, holy crap, man! Like I'm so tired, like so on and so forth. And then if you're aware that it's happening, okay, what is the stressor? It's like I kind of take an analytical approach to it. Is like, what's causing me this stress? How can I eliminate that stress? If you don't know it's coming, which is something that I'm prone to as well, where like you just kind of drift and you're not really getting anything done, and you're like, what's going on? Um, I try to have like mindfulness exercises as much as possible, so meditation every morning. Um, and it's a matter of like, okay, like where is my mind going to? Why is it so scattered? What can I do to solve this? And then it's just about like becoming aware of yourself and how that you are feeling, just on a personal level, and then at that point then maybe you can recognize that you're burnt out, and then you can take the analytical approach of, okay, what do I need to do to solve this? Is it a break? Is it something else? Me personally, like just things that I do is like, one, I will give myself, a day or two every week where it's just like, dude, it doesn't matter what you do, like just do something that you want. As long as you just want to
Mhm.
do it, like do that. Um, and then other things is like when you do tours, for example, like you will inevitably get burnt out because it is stressful as shit. Um, And so there's not necessarily anything that you can do about that in the moment, because you have to do the work, because you've got 10, 12, 15 people counting on you to do your work. Um, but at the end of tours, like I save my money during them so that I can take however much time I need after that to just recenter myself, like become a human again, and just recover. So recovery time is super important, whether that's taken in small periods of time or if you need to take it in a bigger chunk, like don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you actually said that because like I feel like, I mean, obviously I still feel it's good to probably avoid burnout when you can, but ultimately, like at one point or another, it's gonna happen. It's inevitable, especially if you're gonna keep going with, your craft or whatever you're doing. You're gonna at some point have those feelings, and you got to learn how to manage them. You got to learn how to deal with them and to build that like resiliency to like keep pushing through. And I mean, I think like what you said, like taking that time to kind of, just do something that you want to do and that you enjoy. I think that's like so key in doing that. And even if it's just, 10 or 15 minutes of doing something, whatever it is, and just like kind of getting back to yourself. And like you said, that mindfulness as well is huge. But yeah, I think it doesn't have to be as much about like reducing the burnout and reducing the stress and reducing that overwhelm, but it was like learning how to like build ourselves up to like deal with it, because it's gonna happen. But yeah, let's shift a little bit again into, I guess it's not really a shift actually, but I want to talk about like social media and creatives. Is that like a struggle for you at all, or do you find it pretty easy to work out there?
Um, it depends on the moment. Like I've done things where I've like posted a video and or made multiple videos in a day and like just tried that whole like TikTok, Instagram Reels sort of thing. And it works, and like the effort is rewarded as you're doing it.
Mhm.
So if that's something you're motivated by, um, consider doing it. In that approach, what I did was I was just like, all right, cool. This is the time that I set apart for every day. Or when I got a little smarter about it, I was like, oh, different things come up on different days. But if I set time on one day to just do a big, like bulk amount of content, focus all my efforts on that, I found that helped. So,
Hmm.
um, but on the real side of things, like me personally, I've not really ever been huge on social media. Um, as in like the only reason I ever had it was for business and music and stuff like that. Um, so I take breaks, especially if I know that there's going to be a big period of time where I'm going to be on it every day. Um, it can be difficult. It really is, and it's strange almost in a way, at least when you first start, or at least in the phase that I'm in, to
Yeah.
make content for yourself all the time. But you know, um, I make a lot more content than I ever post, honestly.
Hmm.
Like I probably flex the muscle every single day and try to make something, but do I actually post it? No. Now, should I? That's a different question that probably somebody else can answer. Gary Vee would probably yell at me, but um
Whatever.
you know, yeah, that's kind of where I sit with it, is like you should learn how to do it, and it's you're going to see results when you do. Um but if you don't, like, as long as it's not hurting you in any way and you can turn it back on at any point, then
Right.
take your breaks, dude.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's too much pressure, to be honest, like to be on social media and to be putting your stuff out there, especially for like creatives. And like I felt this a lot with like my work. It's just like you need to always be putting stuff out there. You need to always be like you said, like you get people like Gary Vee and like these people that are out there just like yelling at you, beating you over the head, saying like you need to make content, put as much out there as you can. And I feel like it's not talked about enough that social media is more of like a tool, and it's just a tool in your tool belt, and it's not like the gateway to like being a successful creative. And I think that's something that always kind of frustrated me, is because like there's like when you feel, it's like in school, like when you were told you had to read a book, you did not want to read that book, right?
Yeah.
And so like when you're constantly being told like you need to be putting out this content, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that, it's like makes you not want to do it, or at least for me. I don't, maybe that's just my personality, but
Hmm.
and so that's like always been a struggle for me, is like I don't want to feel like I always have to be putting out content. I want to put out content because I want to put out content because it's something I like and I want to put it out there.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think just moral of what I'm saying is just like, I think social media is better used as a resource, and it's better used as a tool in the tool belt instead of it being like the whole tool belt. You know,
Yeah.
it's not, it's not the like end all be all to like you being a successful creative. There's plenty of other ways to do it. I mean, you can go cut hair, you can do, whatever. Um, there's a lot of other paths and routes that you can take, um, that I feel like aren't talked about enough. And there's so much pressure on creatives to be putting that out there. And you just see, I feel like I hear more and more people like nowadays talking about feeling like burnout. And I don't know if this is like from like COVID and quarantine and everything, and everyone like being on their phones more. Um, but I feel like I hear more and more people talking about just feeling burnout, and like hear more and more people taking social media breaks and So I don't know, but anyways, I digress, I
Yeah.
guess, but
On that note too, like one of the things that kind of like, I guess, comforts me when I feel insecure about like follower count or engagement or something like that is like taking a look at
mhm,
just like who's engaging with you and like who like currently does follow you, and like just looking at other creatives that you admire and whatnot. So like I have friends that like make music videos or touring content for some of the best, coolest bands in the world, and you see their name everywhere. But then you go to their Instagram page or literally any of their social, and it's like, yeah, like a few thousand, like nothing bad. But like they're fucking living it up, you
right.
know? And then so like I look at mine and I'm like, yeah, like sure, did I get fucking 500 likes and all this sort of stuff? No, but did like both guitarists of Alice Cooper and like a bunch of my friends and bands that I looked up to when I was young think that that was a cool thing that I did? And did maybe one of them send me a message and like even just have a conversation with me? Hey, dude, that fucking thing you put out was really cool. Or
Mhm,
like, I've seen what you've been doing lately. That's sick. Or if it turns into something, which a lot of the times it does too, someone sees something cool, they get that little FOMO thing, or they're like, damn, you do cool stuff. Like, what could you do for
right,
me? Um, and it's just like quality over quantity.
right,
And,
for sure.
you know, just pursue that really. Just who do you think is going to like the media that you create,
Mhm,
and just post it. Like, and
right.
if you think they'll like it, find a way to just tell them that you think they'd like it and
Mhm,
fucking send it to them, dude. Like, I can't tell
right.
you how many times I do that. I noticed that so and so didn't see it. I'm just like, yo, dude, I don't know why, but like, I did this thing. I think you'd think it's cool. Like, I wanted to show you, see what you think about it. And
Right.
they either think it's sick or they're like, yeah, that's pretty dope. But like, you know, here's what I think you could do better. Or, if you have that kind of honest relationship with them, which is to me just as cool. I like when people tell me, hey, there's this little thing that I didn't think was dope. Then I can look at that thing and be like, I
Mm,
agree or I disagree.
right.
So it's nice.
Well, I mean, it just takes one. I mean, like, what would be more, cool? Like Kendrick Lamar, you were saying, like, seeing your video, thinking that's dope, hitting you up, asking you for a video, or like a million random people liking your post and then not actually taking you,
Yeah.
not giving
Like
you any kind of opportunity. Like,
didn't that literally happen with PG Lang and Kendrick Lamar?
I'm not sure.
PG Lang is now this guy that does like a ton of rap music videos and like short cinematics. He's worked for like
Hmm,
Calvin Klein and stuff too. His
right.
work is super dope. But if I am current and remembering the story right, like Kendrick found him like low follower count, like
Hmm,
just thought he was sick and was like, hey, you're gonna work for me.
right.
And like that was a complete chance game. And like, yeah, is that lottery level crazy? Yes, but like the more the lottery level crazy things have happened to me just because I put myself out there
Yeah.
that I encounter, I'm like, why not? You know,
I
if
mean,
if
you're
you get burned out from making stuff, just post quality, dude.
right. Well, I mean, you're a billion times more likely to, actually achieve what you're trying to achieve if you're focusing on mastering your craft and getting better every day and just like finding the joy in what you do and chasing that passion than if you're sitting here obsessing over like how many likes you did or didn't get, how many followers you do or don't have, what this person thought of it, what that person said about it. Like those that's all really just like vanity metrics, and it's just like all just stuff to boost your ego. And you know like we're saying, like it just takes one person, that right person, seeing it. And there's a quote that says focus on yourself like until they focus on you. And so I mean that's just kind of, I guess, my mentality and more the approach that I would rather take, is just focusing on me, the things that I do, the things I like to do, focusing on just getting better at my craft. And I've noticed when I do that, I find not just that I get like more clients through that or, whatever, but like more importantly, that I feel more fulfillment in what I'm doing, that I enjoy what I'm doing more, that like I feel one of the quickest paths to burnout is to be sitting there and focusing on like what you don't have, and all the vanity metrics and whatnot. But I
Yeah,
mean,
dude, hit the nail on the head.
the amount of people out there that are like buying Instagram followers and buying likes and all that stuff, like half that stuff's fake anyways. So it's like you're basing your own worth against someone else's worth that they bought. It's like fake. And so
Mhm.
I mean, if you want to buy Instagram followers, whatever, do you. But don't compare
I've seen it
yourself
work
to
for
other.
people.
I mean, hey, whatever works for you, but um, don't compare yourself to other people's followers and whatever, because I can't tell you how many people I've seen have like 50,000 Instagram followers and they're getting 20 likes on their posts and no engagement. It's like, what's that actually doing for you other
Right.
than slightly boosting your ego? But whatever. So let's see if I got any other questions for you. What motivates you like to keep going and to keep learning more?
Honestly, anytime I see something that I think is really cool from somebody else, and it doesn't come
Mhm.
in that same way, like it doesn't come from like a place of like, oh, like like the competitive sense, but like whether it's a TV show or a photo that I find on Pinterest or anything like that, I just I take inspiration from it, and I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, that's really cool. Like I've spent a lot of time. I think quarantine kind of helped me with that, of learning how social media affects your brain, and then and how like algorithms even just work, and then being like, all right, cool, well, if I'm going to have this technology in my life, like why not make it work for me? So
Mhm.
when I go on social media, I'm mostly inundated with really like all of the things that I want to see, but the thing that I've trained it to show me is things that I think I could draw inspiration from, or that would inspire me in different ways. And that's been really helpful, of just being like, this is what I want to see, and I know that this motivates me, so I'm just gonna really focus on that.
Mhm.
And I recently, for example, like anytime I see something I like, I save it, and then I put it in like a Milanote board. And I've been writing this just like short film for my
Dude.
own sort of passion project, I guess. And like
Mhm.
I'm very aware of the state it's in. It's like it's cool to look at. I want to bring it to like a screenwriter to make it actually make sense, because
Right.
I know that my skill set is like cinematography and like maybe like telling a general story. Um, but yeah, like just using other people's stuff to inspire me to do more, and then flexing my own creative muscle in the best way that I can at the time, which right now is like I'm going to focus on knowing how those shots work, putting them together, creating a story out of multiple images from multiple different people, and then somewhere down the line when it makes sense for me to execute on it, like doing that. And I know that that'll be a fulfilling thing at the very end of it, and it'll be almost like a nice little time capsule, really. Like
Right.
these were all the things that I was looking at from the start of making this Milanote board, and
Mhm.
like this is the product that it turned into, for whatever it is, whether it's kind of cool or kind of bad or what. I've never done anything like that, so um yeah, that's, I guess my answer is just
Yeah.
taking inspiration from other people. I think inspires me to do better, and to do more with it, and then using it, actually taking the time to digest it and find out what you like about it.
How do you go about like taking inspiration from other people? Like, where do you draw the line between like taking inspiration and comparing?
I think a lot of the times it's a volume game.
Mhm.
um and I kind of learned that from writing music, like at a like confidently say pretty high level. um we would listen to a lot of songs, and then we would just take maybe the one core thing that we liked most about it, and then we would use that in a similar way. Obviously, you don't do the exact same thing, but like an example for what we would do would be like, you listen to Doomed, and you're like, wow, like I really like the way that this song is structured in the sense that it's like a 4-bar intro with a, so on and so forth with exactly what it is. And then being like, well, I'm gonna try to do a song within that song structure, but maybe I like the notes that the song Manic and Wage War has.
Yeah.
So like maybe I'll do something in that key. And then it's like, okay, I like the way that this dude is playing guitar, like the style that he's doing. So the riffs are gonna sound this way. And then now that you have 3 things to put together, like that's not really stealing at that point, is it? Because you've taken influence in different ways, used none of the same qualities from any of those songs, and then just like put it into a project. And maybe you find, yeah, at these some parts, like that does feel a little bit exactly like that other song. So tweak it.
Right.
All right, cool. How do we make it different? How do we not do exactly that? So it's like it's volume and then intention. I mean, if you intend to steal it, then you intend to steal it. People have done it. But like if your intention is like, I'm going to find out what it is for me, which is a personal choice, like a personal preference that is not going to be the same with everybody else, and then just use that one thing. I want to replicate that feeling that I got from it, or that color palette. Like nobody owns a color palette. It's impossible. Right? So then it's just like, okay, cool. Then you have the volume game of all the other things that you like, and then whatever the media is, kind of tying it back to like films, it's like you're not doing exactly that thing, and you're not using it in such a big like stretch of time that anybody would even really notice. It would appear to anyone else as, oh wow, they took a nod from Joshua Tepp, or they really they write their dialogue like whomever, Quentin Tarantino, Scorsese, like whoever, you know and then it becomes its own thing. Then you are the person with the cinematography of blank, the directing quality of blank, the dialogue of this, and you know the folly design of whatever, and you're at a different point, and then that's your thing. There's nothing wrong with taking influence.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't honestly think there's really any creator out there that's never taken any sort of influence from anybody. I mean, I feel like we're all taking influence in some way or another. But a couple more questions before we wrap it up. Curious, how do you handle rejection? Specifically, like, tying everything back together with pricing and knowing your worth and putting yourself out there. When you go and do that and then you get rejected, how do you handle that and overcome it?
Rejection is an interesting thing. I think in my early life, I spent enough time feeling rejected and being rejected that I just honestly, I think as an adult, like I really stopped caring, because like I just learned at the end of the day that I'm not for everybody. And like that is a fact that I'm very comfortable knowing. And like the nice thing on the flip side of that fact is like you are definitely for somebody out there, and that's kind of cool. So then it's not a matter of like being bummed about all the things that you didn't do or that you missed out on, or like whatever happened that you're feeling the emotion of rejection. Then it's like, all right, cool. Well, like I just saved myself some time here, really. Like I found out within 1 month or one conversation, even sometimes, like this wasn't the right fit for me. Sick,
Right.
dude. Now that clears up all my future to just spend it, you know, being in the acquisition of the people that are for me in whatever way that they are, in any facet of life.
Dude, I love that answer. I love that mindset. I love that approach. That's literally, I mean, that's the definition of like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Rejection never at its core feels good, but when we can look at it at face value at what it is, and saying like, look, this, now that I know this saves me time, this saves me energy, so that I can take that energy and put that into what matters and put that into what's actually going to like move things forward and help me to keep going. So I love that answer. I guess just wrapping up here, how can people, get in contact with you, follow along with you?
You could search nevermorevisuals.com. Facebook, I don't post on it at all because I don't care about it, but mostly my website and Instagram, and I'm not on TikTok as well. I'm probably going to be posting some cool tour content. I'm going to do a little challenge for myself, see how long I can keep up on personal content while also doing it for 2 bands at one time on like daily deliveries. So follow there for the small part of the journey, and as we progress, the website is the highest thing for me. It's like that's where I'm posting the stuff that I really think is cool, and it usually stays there for a period of time and then moves on to whatever else I think. But yeah, those would be the 3 ways I'd say. Just search the name and you'll find it.
Right on. All right, last and final question. So I'm big on giving people like actionable steps and helping people instead of just talking about things, like actually taking action. So just to ask you, not to put you too much on the spot here, but sort of how over the next, week or so, how do you foresee yourself like diving into the uncomfortable? What are like some plans you have to get yourself out there into the uncomfortable?
Right now I'm in the process of packing my bags, and that as somebody that has OCD, it's something that actually comforts me quite a bit. So I've stretched it out over a couple of days. I enjoy making a nice, neat, organized space. My packing jobs are very impressive. And so that's something, is like the preparation on all sides of it. I'm getting together all the things that I need for 3 months. It kind of just really focuses me. And then it's really enjoying the free time that I'm going to have, because I know that in 4 days there's not going to be much leisure activity. And so that's sort of like the uncomfortable jump that we're doing is the preparation side of it, and being ready to meet probably about 40 new people and live with maybe 10 of them and see the other 30 every single day for 10 weeks. So
love it, dude. I can't wait to follow you along as you go on this tour, see what you create, what comes out of it. So much value in this episode, dude. So much more I could keep unpacking, keep going, honestly, for hours, but respect your time. So
yeah, dude, I loved being on it. It was a fun conversational journey, and I'm excited for seeing the other parts of your podcast and all that, because one thing I can do is listen to things in the bunk. So
appreciate it, brother.
Definitely listen along.
Might have to have you back after the tour, talk about lessons learned along the way, but
sure thing. There's always plenty.
Absolutely. All right, well, thank you for coming on here, chatting with me, diving into some uncomfortable topics. For those of you tuning in, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Go hit up Hauke, follow along with him, show him some support, show him some love. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Catch you on the next one. What's up, guys? Jake here again. Just wanted to thank you real quick for listening to this episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you would please go leave us a rating or review wherever you're listening to this. Really helps us out, really helps us tell more people about the uncomfortable and to help more people live fulfilled lives. So if you could go take 2 seconds to go do that, that would mean the world. Now go take one actionable step towards your dreams today and to apply what you heard here on this episode. You got this. I'm rooting for you as always. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Uncomfortable Podcast. Catch you on the next one.
Take yourself out your comfort zone. If you want to be ordinary, you ain't even got to listen to me.
Comfort is overrated. We've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.